thanks everyone for coming in person and on Zoom. And as I said in the reminder email, Dr. Shackelford isn't able to make it today, but Alan, who's worked on the design team for the project, her project, as well as other projects dealing with archaeology, has agreed to give the presentation in person. So Alan along with Dr. Shackelford are from the University of Illinois. Oh, there it is, right there. And so I guess I'll just let Alan take it away.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here in Indiana. Let me know if they can't hear me or anything there. Okay, so as Bill mentioned, I'm part of a project with Professor Laura Shackelford at the University of Illinois. And she's an archaeologist, terrifically engaging and interesting. There's a lot of information about her out on the web. There's, I think, like some PBS specials and stuff that include her. So she's like Indiana or Illinois Shackelford, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm here to fill in. I'm using her slides. So I'll do the best I can with the archaeology thing. I come from the VR side, the background side. And so some of that's reflected in the slides, but while we're here, if you've got questions or thoughts, we can talk about, you know, the VR parts of it, you know, the travel, the interactions, those kinds of things. So we'll just get started. Also, she gave me these slides and they've got wonderful little notes, but we couldn't figure out how I can see the notes here. So if there's anything particularly interesting, I may jump out of the slides to see her notes about the slide. So who am I? I currently work as a consultant for the EXCEED program, which is unrelated to this. I just put that up so you know the background I'm coming from. That's the Extreme Science and Engineering Discovery environment. And if anyone's interested in that, I know you've got all sorts of people here that are involved at Indiana, but by all means, let me know. In EXCEED, my focus is on humanities, arts, and social sciences. But that's where I spend the bulk of my time, but I also do AR and VR research and development, and also write books in that space, some with Bill Sherman, yeah, some with Jeff Will, and then some on my own. So what is it that I, in my own mind, do in the AR, VR space? I'm interested in changing the dynamic by which we interact with computers and thus with the world. I'm especially interested in what happens at the edges of the digital and the physical world. And consequently, I've got a big and strong interest in augmented reality. And then also, what are the ramifications on teaching and learning for digital versus physical information? And that's why the project with Professor Shackelford is great, because that's a very physical thing. We're bringing it into the digital space. And I'll give a little history about the AR versus VR decision there of what we did here. But we'll just do that as we go along. One of the questions these first couple of slides are mine, they're not Laura's. So we'll just indulge these. People always ask me, how do projects like this come about? And so I just thought I'd give a little view of how this particular project came to be from my perspective. I'm the one that's here. I'm sure Professor Shackelford and others involved might say differently, but from my perspective, how this happened was that I was involved in a project with polar programs at the National Science Foundation. They had me come out to give a workshop, not to give a workshop, to participate in a workshop, and I was a speaker, but I was looking and seeing all this archaeology that was happening there in the Arctic Social Sciences group. And so the NSF program officer was there. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking of all these things we could do, particularly with augmented reality with respect to what I was seeing on screen. So I talked to her, and this was a long time ago, like 10 years ago. And I had some demonstrations of some mobile augmented reality with me, and I showed it to the NSF program officer that was there. And she said, yes, let's do this. Let's try and engage this with the kinds of things we're doing. So she says, write me a proposal. So that resulted in a project that was funded. Bob McGrath and I wrote that and got a NSF grant. And what we did there was to she coupled us up with a group that had something called the VZAP database, which is the Virtual Zoological something. I always look for it as VZAP. And what that is there was a large scale effort to digitize all these 3D objects that were things that people found north of the Arctic Circle, right? And so we were interested in how could we couple that in with this notion of augmented reality. But when I was developing the proposal with McGrath, talked to the program officer and said, we need an archaeologist. So she connected us with an archaeologist out at New York University. And we did do considerable work with her, but archaeologists, just one of the side things as a VR guy, they're gone, right? They go out to Neverland and they're digging and out of reach. So we did finish a demonstration game environment that was targeted to kids to get them out of their seats. It was an augmented reality thing where kids could use a mobile device, and essentially by excavating sheets of paper and things like that, they could find artifacts that were being pulled from the VZAP database. It was just a demonstration, but that went really well. But we thought we could do something here. Again, this is my perspective, but we need closer coupling with the archaeologist. So this doesn't look like archaeology at all, but fast forward, and I was doing work with our vet school and using, again, mobile augmented reality. And we created this thing called the Illinois cow. Our name for it was Desktop Bessie, or else Dr. Moolittle, but they decided to release it as Illinois cow because you had to have the Illinois there. And so I was doing that. And at that point, someone contacted me and said, there's someone here that is wanting to talk to you about something. And I assumed it was over this kind of stuff. So I brought this demo along, and it was Professor Shackelford. And I said, so why are we here? And she goes, I want to talk about databases. And I'm like, okay, am I the right guy? You know, and I'm like, what have you got going on? And she goes, well, she's an archaeologist, but she's also with the medical school, and they're digitizing these bones, these archaeological artifacts and these medical things. And what could we talk about databasing those? And I'm like, oh, have you ever seen this VZAP database that's done? Because that's a model for how this can be done. And I showed that to her. And she goes, wow, and what can you then, how can you use it? And I said, well, let me just show you something that I'm doing. And I showed her, I didn't have that demo with me, but I happened to have the cow. And I showed this to her, and I showed this and then turned the skin off, and she saw those bones there, and she just sat there and she played with this thing. And I thought, what the heck is she thinking, you know? And then she looked up and she goes, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. How can we do this for archaeology, right? And also for medicine, but her interest was archaeology. So concurrently, our College of Education hosted this thing called the ILSDA competition, which is Illinois Learning something or other. The whole thing was they were offering money to help groups get together interdisciplinarily. And so Laura and I had already, I did a proposal with our vet school, and we proposed to put on this workshop where we could bring all these people together, and we got money to do that. And so I made sure that Laura was involved. I think I skipped a slide, no? Nope, I guess I didn't. Laura and I were talking. I made sure she was invited to this workshop. I also, we invited people from all over campus. One of the other people we invited was Professor Steve Laval. I don't know if you know who he is. And I made sure that Laura and Steve sat next to each other at these meetings. Steve was a VR researcher. Well, actually, he's a, what do you call it, robotics guy. But he had gone out to Oculus when they first started to be their chief scientist. And so he had just returned from Oculus as a VR chief scientist out there. And so we got him involved in the conversation. And so what we started talking about then, and we were in the context too of this education program, was to do something educational. We wanted to do something game-based. Through our discussions, we chose VR as opposed to AR. We then engaged with some others, like from the education school, Professor David Huang, who has the strong theoretical background in game-based education, as well as where I had first met him was on NSF panels. He was evaluating evaluation plans for things. And I'm like, well, if we're going to do this, we've got to evaluate this strongly. So he was my first pick, and Laura and Steve were definitely on board to have him engaged. So then we wrote the NSF grant that was strongly built on that prior grant. We won the grant and began the project then. So this is where Laura's talk would start then. And so this is where she digs over in Laos. And again, she's got some nice notes here. I'm gonna jump out. And she directs a field site in northern Laos. And she's over there several weeks a year. They're looking for the early signs of the earliest humans that migrated out of Africa. And some of the things that are particularly significant there, they're working with the government over there. But after more than a decade of working over there, she's only had the opportunity to have 2 students from here work with her, right? So over there, it's all sorts of expense and logistical nightmares. It's, she says it's a 24-hour flight into the capital and then a full day of driving through winding mountains on dirt and gravel roads. Then you hike up a mountain, right? So she's the real deal, right? You know, and it's dangerous too, right? And so she says it's been a transformative site with respect to finding and understanding the earliest people that arrived there. But it was clear that she couldn't share this site with the world. And so she was thinking about how can we share this, right? So actually, it's okay if we just run the slides this way. Yeah, and local people. There's a lot of local people over there that are doing actual digging work and carrying. Yeah, so they do that. So here is her the real world of okay, this is the real world. This is her cave. Again, it's literally down in a cave. You enter this hole and you go down there, and stalactites and stalagmites and all that sort of thing. It's dark. They have to have a generator down there, all sorts of things. And let's go to the next slide. And here's some more shots of archaeology in the real world. You can see something they do here. They've got this grid, which are, you know, they've got a grid across the ground, but then the strings hanging down. So they've got like a 3D grid here. And then you can see the people going down and the people working with the buckets and the ground. Let's see. Next slide, sure. Right, there's an arrow that all right, right here. Okay, so very good, thank you, Bill. So some of the difficulties about teaching this kind of field science and the archaeological methods is socioeconomic. Kids can't afford to do this. At Illinois, at least, and I can't speak for other places, I know that to get that archaeology designation on your degree, you have to complete an approved field school, right? And that's a problem because you have to arrange it, you have to have the money for it, you have to take the time to do it and so forth. So there's socioeconomic barriers, there's time constraints, there's also this ableist issue that not everyone can physically do this, right? It's research intensive, it's logistically challenging, and there's also these issues of harassment and safety and of taking people into these sites. The thing is, it's a kinesthetic thing. You need this physical component. And so let's see if she's got anything here. Fewer opportunities, but when opportunities are available, they're limited to very few students, which is really unfortunate. Also, there's other problems that these are priceless objects they're dealing with, can potentially be destructive. There's this whole ethical issue. She teaches a course on archaeological ethics, and I'm not even going to go there. And there's also this notion that, you know, people have this image, you know, of what archaeologists do, that it's important to get these students a real world view of what archaeologists do and let them do it. So what we decided to do was an immersive, interactive, room scale virtual excavation with the goal of teaching primarily field methods. And she might, I don't want to limit it to that. She's got other things she's after in here as well. But we went with, there's a lot went into all these decisions. We're using the HTC Vive. We're using the Unreal game engine, and we made it all multi-participant. And we wanted to go with game-based learning. So we have engaged, as I said, Professor Huang to help us with that. And that resulted in this course that's running right now as we speak. It's a semester-long course. It's called Virtual Archaeology. And it is all 16 weeks, and every week has the VR lab. I believe it's 3 or maybe 4. It's semester hours. Yeah, so it's a full-blown course. Yeah, and so, what? No, it's not all lab. I've got a slide here. It's got a lecture on Tuesday and Thursday, and then lab on Wednesday. So there's lab happening right now as we speak. No, it's not. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, exactly. But we wanted to capitalize on the capabilities of VR and have natural physical interactions with this data and adapt to different learning and be able to have repeatability. So again, one of the things is that these experiences aren't available to most in the real world. We have no risk interactions. No one's gonna hopefully get injured or sick or die. We can guarantee a certain amount of results. We can then also process all sorts of data. I'll talk about our data collection there and hopefully get the students a big picture view. Let's see if there's anything there. Oh, yeah, realistic recording and measuring of data. So the students in the VR experience are measuring, and they are keeping lab notebooks. We've given them also a virtual camera so they can take pictures of things. They have to keep a lab notebook, and we do it just like they do in the real world. So they got a lab notebook where they can keep notes. They've got a camera they can use. And again, there's not slides in here, but what we have are a whole assortment of tools that are available to them. At the very beginning, one of the exercises is that they get a backpack and they have to decide what they're taking with them. And there's all sorts of interactive things in that space that they can choose from. We've got candles, we've got flashlights, we've got tape measures, we've got big lighters, you know, dynamite, everything. So it's great fun to see the kids come in the first time in the space. And of course they want to light everything on fire and blow up the dynamite and that sort of thing. So they pack their backpack and that sort of thing. One of our goals was to have lots of manipulatable things in the space.
What's the balance between, maybe you'll get to this, but what's the balance between the sort of gamified version of those things versus the more realistic?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. The question for those out there was, what's the balance between the sort of gamified, tell me if I'm misinterpreting your question, the gamified aspects of this versus the just trying a totally realistic, authentic thing. And we talk about that a lot, right? How many fantastical elements do we want to have, and how much do we want to have it actually mimic? So we made tape measures, right, and things like that. And what we learned was that, and we haven't fully decided on this, but with the Vive and the 2 controllers, that's kind of a difficult thing to do that way. So what are the ramifications of them just being able to say, bonk, bonk, what's the measurement? You know, that kind of thing. So that's an ongoing thing. And also, so there's that kind of fantastical, you know, that doesn't exist as a physical thing they've got in the cave. But then there's also, do we want to go into, and I'll use the word again, fantastical spaces where magical things can happen, with the goal being towards engagement, you know, just to keep learning going. So that's an ongoing debate. And I think we've evolved more from, you know, in the original proposal, we said the goal wasn't to stay rigorously physically accurate, but to find that blend. And I think though, even from where we started, we're going a little bit more towards allowing the idea of fantastic. And that's where, if all of us were in the room right now, they might all have different answers than me. So coming back to the course logistics, Jeff asked about the lab and lecture. We have a VR lab set up in the foreign language building that has 4 Vives in there that run concurrently. And we've got currently, this semester, we limited to 24 students. It was full, right? We had to reject people. It's Tuesday and Thursday lecture and discussion, and then a weekly VR lab. And we were really like, how long can we keep them in VR? And we had originally set very short on our radar as people are only going to be able to do this. We're doing it for an hour and kicking them out so the next section can come in. They don't want to come out, which is very interesting. I'll show you some photos as we move along. Some things are counterintuitive to what I would have predicted and expected. So the course, and here you can see sort of, that's the, I wish we had the demo that you could try here today. We'll get it over to you somehow, but you hopefully some of the shots as we go along, you'll be able to see the kinds of things we have. But they keep their field notebook in both physical and real world. Let's see, series of sequential questions and mysteries. It's based on the history of the US. So we're not making her cave. That's an important point. We talked about whether we make her cave or a cave, right? And we made a cave that had features in it that maybe hers didn't, that we wanted the students to see, right? So it's a cave of caves to make sure that we can allow for different kinds of things we want the students to see, because there's a certain way you dig in her cave, right? We want to see different things. And again, she would remind me all the time, archaeology is more than digging, so don't just emphasize the digging, yeah.
In the VR space, how do they keep their notebook?
Okay, that's a great question, and I'll show you a slide coming up here. But the bottom line is we've tried a bunch of experiments. We're having 2 people, one in and one out. We're pairing students, mostly for the safety issue. You know, we can't just have them all in. So at any given moment, there's 4 people running, 8 people in the lab, and the other one maintains the notes. The other one's taking pictures and dictating and stuff from within. There's rewards and penalties based on decisions and interpretations. It's based on the history of Eastern US limestone caves. So again, as I just mentioned, archaeology is not just digging. A lot is about site preparation. Even if you go to field school, you don't get to do the site preparation because that's done when you get there, right? You're there to help do the actual work. So this allows students to participate in that early stuff. Now this is real world, of course, but they do this all in VR as well. So I just had a thought that I wanted to mention. Where'd it go? It'll come back. So they have to learn things about the site, and that's going to inform what tools they can use and things like that. Because if they're taking data and the soil has certain magnetic properties, then all of a sudden certain kinds of sensors are useless. So, and that's part of what they're having to decide when they go in the VR cave here. And they have to do it right. They have to get that right and lay out their grids right and things like that. Besides their notebook, we also have them do reflections. I think every lab, if not every lab, very close to every lab, where they just write up their thoughts and what they're thinking about. And those have been greatly interesting to read, those reflections. Some of the issues are with respect to technical issues, like this week was harder because I kept hitting my thing against the floor, right? You know, my controller against the floor. So technical issues like that versus also learning thoughts. And that's my other thought, was there are students in there who have been to field school. And this is one of the things that they said was great about this, was they got to do those site preparation exercises and things like that, that they didn't get to when they went to real field school. And
Well, what you just said about the floor, is the ground the same as the floor then?
yeah, we've experimented with that. What? The question was, since the students, at least in the 1 week, were writing in their journals that they would hit the floor. So when you're digging, you're going down, right? And so the question is, in VR, do we raise the virtual ground, or what do we do there, right? And so we've talked about everything from building a little platform that has a recess in it and things like that. But right now, we've got the floor, the dig site elevated above the floor, which leads to a certain disconnect, but no one complains about that. They complain if they hit the floor, right, with their trowel. And the digging model, the soil model, is actually quite interesting. It will, It's a soil model that we've got a graduate student, a great graduate student. His name's Cam Merrill, and I was hoping he would be here today. And that's his baby, and among other things. But it's actually, the field school kids say it's like they used, and you can hit the dirt and it'll poof up dust and stuff like that. And they use their Vive controller as their trowels and things like that. We're planning to instrument real trowels and things like that at some point. But for right now, we're using the Vive controllers with avatars over them that look like the tools.
Then you can just have your trowel stick out farther than the controller, so that when you dig, your trowel.
Yeah. So that's, there's all sorts of games to play there. Yeah. And like I say, we've got flash. Yeah, you can fake that it's, there's head games, right? So her course objectives were to recognize the goals and the ethics of archaeology, ethically engage with Native communities during fieldwork, frame hypotheses, and formulate a research plan for excavation, make field observations, collect data, make interpretations. So when I'm talking about data today, we have to keep in mind, I might be talking about, I'll try to be clear, about the data the students are gathering, and then our data that we're gathering on the students, right? Then they have to use the found objects from their environment to recreate and interpret past events and reconstruct and evaluate prehistoric events. They need to be able to identify their site and construct their grid, use basic tools. The game part of it then, we need to enforce rules, present the tasks as goal-oriented play, and support learner autonomy. So we do situate in a fantasy world where, again, as I say, it's not her cave. The whole challenge and competition. Let's see if she says anything here. Yeah, we want the exercises to be slightly out of reach to push them along. Multimedia representations to reduce cognitive demands and develop visual and spatial skills. So here is an example of a task they do in there. And after my contact slide, I've got the other tasks so far this semester, if we've got time to go through them. But so you see task one, the learning objective was to frame a hypothesis and formulate a research plan for excavation. They had to select the appropriate survey methods and equipment. And then in the game structure, they had to identify features that were relevant to available remote survey techniques, like the ground penetrating radar, the magnetometry, Lidar, metal detector. What'd she say here? She says, she's just expounding on that, of what the Lidar and that are. Magnetic surveys are ideal for identifying prehistoric features, pits, architectural features. Yeah, a big part of this is problem solving and interacting with other people, transferable game solving strategies. We started late, so I'm trying to skip through some to make sure we get you out of here in time. So what we did then, before the last fall, we built a prototype environment, and we wanted to get a strong prototype. So we built the cave and set out some tasks, and we got 150 undergrads, unrelated to the course, to come through. We streamed that through and took data. They did this self-contained VR activity in the cave. They had to take an online survey, and then we have a graduate student from the education school that's in interview methodologies, and we interviewed them and got a lot of good feedback. Some of the things they did, they came into the cave. We have a little virtual tape recorder thing that then gave them instructions of what to do. It was couched in the it's the mystery, right? And so they had to do things. And one of the things they had to do was dig in a certain space, and they'd find these pieces of bottles. And then they'd have to go back to this lab area and pull up data about those and identify these pieces from their era, whether, and then we asked him questions about, was this from the Revolutionary War, the TB outbreak, and that sort of thing. So they had to identify these pieces. And so we did that, and we got data on 150 undergrads, and we will, we used that then to inform the actual thing. I added this slide because I figured you guys would care about what we're taking. Of course, this is all IRB, under IRB, had to be IRB approval. We're interested in evaluating the VR application and the learning that's happening in the VR application. So we're keeping the student notebooks, including the photos they're taking, the measurements, their conclusions, that sort of thing. We're also keeping the student reflections. We're interviewing them and giving them questionnaires. We're keeping the tracker data from the VR system. We're also videoing them as they're in the space. So we've got, and there's probably more that I didn't think of last night as I put this slide in. So we're collecting a lot of data on what's going on. Then just really quickly here, just to show you some of the kids in the site, and I'll just flip through them. There's a bunch in here. And I asked Laura, I said, is this how people posture and pose in the, exactly, so you can see up here, she's laying out a grid, right? Some more shots from within. So you can see there that they're working in pairs.
Is the note taker supposed to provide guidance, or is it just supposed to be there too?
I'm the wrong person to ask that question of. That would be a Dr. Long question, because they're all given instructions on what they are and aren't supposed to do. But I think they're working as a pair mostly.
This other one looking at
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's a great question. I'm not sure what our protocol is. Oh, the question was, does the assistant provide advice and feedback and help beyond just taking notes and that sort of thing, and protecting safety? And I think they do provide. I think they're working together. And here's some more. I just dropped a bunch in so you could see this is a very physical thing, right? Oh, just a side note, you see the lighthouse there. Because we're in a shared space, we'd have to go in and set up every class, and it was kind of a hassle, right? So one of the kids on the team, which interestingly, probably to Tassie, is greatly into photogrammetry. He is doing a lot of photogrammetry on artifacts that we've got in here, but also he's into 3D printing. And so he made us some really cool little mounts for our things that they didn't object to, so we can leave our trackers on the ceiling. So the goal was to match learning objectives, game features, goal-oriented play, support learner autonomy, and align the VR activities with the mental and cognitive investment. Benefits. Okay, the field school requirement. Let's come back to that. Remember, to get the archaeology designation on their degree, they have to attend field school. This class is approved as field school. Now, I'm sure that's a very controversial decision, but it is fulfilling the requirement due to the lack of field schools and the expense and that. So they are counting this towards that designation. Right, and I don't know all the details that go into it, but it meets the requirement for the degree designation.
Do you know how many archaeologists they graduate?
I don't know the answer to that. The question was how many archaeology students do they graduate, and I just don't know the answer to that.
That's a great follow-up study, right? Like, what is the rate of field? I mean, I'm sure people know some of this.
Right.
Going into it, is it blocking, people of color or,
Exactly.
So this obviously things.
Right, so the question from Tassie was about all sorts of questions that come out of this in terms of data of what's currently happening, how many field schools are there, is it blocking it, certain demographics and those sorts of questions, and those are great questions. Again, if they're doing this in VR, they're not negatively impacting real world artifacts, that sort of thing. It's kind of our next steps are we want to broaden the audience for this. This is multi-participant, so we're interested in down the road saying, could we, if there were folks interested in Indiana University, and I don't know what you guys do and don't offer about archaeology classes. So one would be to deploy the application here and use it, or have an extension to where they could join this class in VR here with Laura as the instructor back there, or someone. We want to add in additional educational levels. There's this Army Corps Veterans Curation Program, and I'm not sure about details about that, and there's no notes on that. We want to bring in new content, though, because we are building this in I'm going to say a smart way to where we're not limited to archaeological kinds of content here. So, and exploring other kinds of courses that we might bring into this kind of space. Then here's the NSF. There's David Huang, the education guy. There's Cameron Merrill, the primary VR graduate student. We've got Jamie Arjona, who's an anthropology grad student. And these are the lead grad students. We only have, I believe, the 3 grad students. And then I know that recently we've gotten some undergrad helpers on the VR development. Then Atlas and CITL, that's their Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning. Atlas is like the campus computing support. And these guys, I think they just basically helped us get lab space and where we could set up and helped with those kinds of logistics. I added an acknowledgement slides and said the students are great. We've got, this is Cam, the killer VR. He's great, and he's got some undergrad helpers. We've got, on the content development side, photogrammetry, 3D printing, data collection. Even that 150 students that we did last semester, that's a logistical nightmare, to get them all through and have the interviewers available and that sort of thing. And then of course, we should acknowledge the students that are taking the class. How are we on time? 4:48. Can I have time to show one? Okay, I just wanted to say, okay, and depending on what people want to see, that's sort of the core of Laura's class. But I wanted to show you something else that's happening in archaeology at Illinois. I just have a couple of slides on it. Professor Tim Paukatat studies Cahokia. And what we're doing with him, do what? Oh, it's down by St. Louis. It's a, I'm not the expert on Cahokia, so I would probably.
It's an old burial mound.
Yeah, it's burial mounds.
Yeah, so it's burial mounds. It's actually one of the schools that they go to.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of the places they go.
Yeah, so there's basically there's both a national and an IU, like Cahokia. I mean, I think for Midwestern folks, it's the place to go.
Right, right. And that's where, but I think they've stopped that field school. Don't quote me on that for sure, but I believe that's one of the things too that's driving the virtual field school. But I could be wrong on that.
Mound builder culture was part of the U.S. 100 years ago. So you can find mounds in Ohio, Angel Mounds, southern Indiana, and Cahokia was, I think, the most famous.
Right. And the part that I'm working on with Tim specifically is Emerald, the Emerald site, Emerald Acropolis site. And so we're doing primarily AR, but we've also got a VR version and a desktop version. So what we have today that's working, and I could even show you this, is computer vision based augmented reality dioramas on maps. So you lay out your map and you can see the site and you can see it at different time eras, and you can do certain things like you can take the roofs off of buildings and things like that and see. And he's more interested in these cultural spaces as opposed to this bone, right? And Laura's more about those more specific things. And I don't want to misstate what either of them are all about, but so right now we are entering development for doing what we've been doing as dioramas at full scale on the site with no vision, without vision. We're using SLAM tracking, and I've done some tests already, and I believe we're going to be able to do this because I've given Tim an app that he can go down there and put stuff up at full scale and see how it tracks. And so what we have to do now is, instead of him putting it there and scaling it to the right size, just make it so that we can put it in an absolute space so the end user doesn't have to, and at the correct scale. So we need to remove those two burdens from the user, right? And then they should be able to walk around. And if any of you want to try that app that Tim did that experiment with, that's the one I told Tassie about this morning. It's called AR Worldview. A student and I put that together. And what that app does is, and I can show a video of that if anyone wants to see it, it allows you to query the Google Poly database, which, do you know Google Poly? Google Poly is like a YouTube for 3D objects and things like that. Anyone can upload things and then people can use them. So what we made basically was a augmented reality browser for the Poly database. So you can go in and do a query. So if you go in and you say, whatever, piano, and you find a grand piano, it'll help you drill down, and then you can find one, and then you just place it in the environment and scale it, and then it's there as you move around the environment. So like I say, we've got the core stuff there. We just have to add on some capabilities to absolutely place things and scale them so the user doesn't have to do that. And we've got the Vive experience there. Let's see. Oh, we did at the Cahokia conference, we did a display, and I put this slide in just so people could see the Emerald Acropolis. And you can see here we've got the map laid out on the table, and people could go around and view the diorama, and then we had one set up, and you can see what's going on up here on the big screen. It's just reflecting the mobile device. There you can see the desktop version running. You can see inside some of these spaces that we've got. So you can go in and just explore. And there's my contact slide. So I've got some more slides after this, if anyone wants to see them, which are the learning objectives and the tasks that the students had to do in Professor Shackelford's class. But that's what I kind of thought was the core thing. I wish you could try this, but I don't have the app with me. So both Laura and Cam couldn't come, and we couldn't get the app over here. So that's it, I guess. Any questions?
You have one of the videos for the, like the, you showed me before the training video for Laura's. Do you have that? I tried to find the link to it. I found the link on Microsoft SharePoint, but
Is there a web browser here? I'm just going to go, let's see.
So is it on YouTube or something?
Well, I think she's got a link to it on her page. Okay, there's Laura. Hi, Laura. Yeah, okay. And there's this particular grant. Let's see, she's got a, okay, here it is. Virtual archaeology and courses, works in progress. I thought she had a press link. And that's where that video is. We have a website that's not full yet. Let's see. Oh, public media. Let's try this. Oh, here we go.
So I have the sound turned down because it echoes.
I don't
Do you need the
recognize.
sound, or do you want to talk?
No, let's see if we got sound.
I want to be in an actual like gypsum pit, and I want to like dirty, and I want to like. Then I know that. I mean, like,
We have one. We should see it. And all this. So we have that, and so that we're playing. Oh, the Tassie says she wants. Oh, there's the camera. Wants a gypsum pit where you can go in and kneel down in the dirt and dig in it and get dirty. So we have that, but it's not in the class. We're doing experiments to see what we do and don't want to do. You know, Professor Huang said, you know, we could get one of those big swimming pools, right? You know, and just do that kind of thing.
well, especially if you did it in the summer and then you put it under a tent or something, right? Like, so it was field school.
Yeah, we've talked about going out in the tent and getting the heat and everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you could do places. So I know here they also go to.
There you can see her digging. Yeah.
But who has the money to go to?
I think this is our older soil. I think I could be wrong, but that looks like our prior soil model.
Have you had to think at all yet about people with disabilities to do something?
Yeah, and we've contacted the Disabilities Research Institute, and so we're getting, we're working with them, absolutely. The question is, what about students with disabilities? And we're working with the Disabilities Research Institute and looking to get some students to come over and try it, or us to take to a place where it would be good for them to test this. Yeah, so yeah, that's absolutely on our radar. Let's see. Oh, here's, oops. That doesn't look good. See, we're just developing the website now. So you can see some scenes in the.
What are they modeling in?
Largely, okay, models are coming from multiple places. I believe some's coming from Blender, some's coming from Maya, and then some's coming from the photogrammetry. It depends on what tools the students that are doing those models use, right? You know, so we've got undergrads helping with that, and so if they know a tool, who cares? You know, kind of.
I think also the cave ecology is really interesting because I've only been caving once, and I knew I could fit through the like little places because the person in front of me was bigger than I was, but it still didn't like. I had my helmet and so you could build them, right? Like, but it, you know, the breakdown was a big deal in this cave, but there were burn marks on the wall from because it is a place for Native Americans to come for a long time. Just that at this point, the breakdown has built up. The caving, I think, like actually getting them into a cave possibly would before they go to a field.
Right, yeah. Another thing that Tassie's raising the issue of getting them in a real cave before they go to this field school. Another thing that we have done, we've got sound in the environment, just some sort of obvious sound stuff, but we met with, I don't know if you guys know Carla Scaletti, she's does a lot with respect to computed sound and sound in VR space. And so we've met with her and we're talking about all sorts of things we can do in terms of acoustically modeling the reflections in the cave and things like that. So you can hear your own voice echo back in different spaces and things like that, trying to just add that dimension. And then of course there's all the ambient sounds if there's a fire and things like that, that just, we've got those, but what we can explore further with respect to sound. And we do have, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, in case anyone's watching, a collapse, you know. And I know that when I was in there the other day, I said, we need to have a stalactite fall, you know, a bay of them fall and stuff like that. And we've got some critters, you know, that are running around and things like that.
Thousands of them, and you just have to be like, if I get past the entrance, 1,000 feet in, there'll be no more crickets, it'll be fine.
Right, and there are issues too, like with the generator, that you've got a finite amount. That's one of our solutions for spending too much time, is the generator can run out of gas. And then there's also the issue of noxious fumes and things like that. Yeah, Eric.
You mentioned earlier today collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Does your application support?
Yes, it does. Repeating the question, does the application support multiple, bye-bye, thanks for coming, multiple users in the same virtual space, right? And the answer to that is yes, both locally and remotely. We are not doing that right now because we're figuring out what we really want to do, but we are technologically there. We have that working. And well, one of the things, I'll go back to Laura here. One of the things is that when you're at a dig, it's multiple people, right? And you're bumping into people, people move your tools, all that sort of thing. But see, she shows here this diagram that shows these grid points. And if I'm working in this grid point and this grid point, those people need to be communicating, right? So that's another one of the issues of tasks that require accumulation of information from yourself and also from others too. I think that's a great image right there that shows, you know, that these things aren't relegated to grid points, you know, to grid boxes, right? So if you're in a grid box, so be it. So here's some of the objectives. Form a research plan for excavation to support your hypothesis. Select the appropriate survey method and equipment. You can choose from all these different things. And let's see here.
Have a virtual LiDAR that you can scan?
I don't think we do right now, but that will be there. Oh, do we have a virtual LiDAR machine? So task 2 is to, analyze the LiDAR data and decide where to locate the excavation grid. So he might have actually built that. I've not seen this picture before last night. So I'm not sure what all we do and don't do versus this picture. Use a compass and laser guide to orient. I suppose that's north-south data marker and baseline, mark 1 meter intervals for 3x3 grids. 4, dig and sift the first 10 centimeters of excavation, dig and sift the next 10 centimeters, determine the horizontal extent of the feature and next dig location based on info gathered from the first open unit. Once feature is completely uncovered and mapped, bisect, midden, and excavate. So we're in what, week like 9 or 10 now? So this been pretty significant lab work that's been going on already. I don't go to all the classes, so I can't say for sure what all is happening, but I know we're through all these that are on the slides. Right, and Laura talks about that. The question is there a time when it's most important to take a picture of the feature? And it's just like in the real world, and she gives them heuristics, I suppose, of what you want to take pictures of. But it's interesting that they don't all take pictures of the same thing. And so we've got these collections of pictures too that we haven't really done, but is ripe for mining to say, are, you know, what is happening with the picture taking, right? And let's see, activities: excavate and sift the next 10 centimeters of soil to find part of the information from this layer, part of a wall foundation, soil discoloration, door latch, pieces of medicine and salve bottles and charcoal. That's another thing that you have to worry about too, is have I found something that's historical, or have I found something that someone left there later as like garbage, you know, that sort of thing. I'm acting like I'm an archaeologist here, but
No, so Hitler was the question for staging trash. So an archaeologist, and he was like, of course, the trash that's on top is the newest. And then so I think staging, and then like as you go down, it was enough of a baby. We didn't have other good, reliable.
right, so Tassie was talking about the temporal component to oldest being at the bottom with the newer trash being at the top and things like that of a thing. So uncover entire unit and all features, pickaxe head. And I'm not sure, honestly, I don't think we tell them they're looking for a pickaxe head. That's what we're knowing they need to find, you know, things like that. Mining tokens, bones, disturbed soil, photo and record and remove any found objects. And we give them some historical documents and newspaper clippings and things to help them with that. There you can see a trowel and the tape recorder, and there's this instruction board where they can look to get instructions. That's in that pre-task thing that we did last semester. There's just a photo of that. I think one of the things they win there is they get their pith helmet if they get this right. I think that's mostly, yeah. This is the first semester, so we're like a little over halfway through the first real semester of it. So now we're deciding whether to do it in the fall or next spring then. Well, the plan is to offer it again, and we're deciding, do we want to do it in the fall or in the spring? And I'm not sure what the sequencing will be. I think that's what we're trying to figure out too, you know. That's what we're doing this year, this semester. The question is, how often is the course going to go, you know, spring and fall semesters, and how many students? This semester we did the 24. We're looking at how we can up that, right? And largely our limit right now is the physical space, because we can fit basically the 4 pairs in the room that we've got, and there's 2 issues. How many can we fit in the room, and how many can the instructor and TA support, right? And so we're trying to think of, if we had more space, and where would it be? Because we can get more Vives and things like that. How many can we support reasonably? All the way up to scaling out to, what if we had people at multiple campuses all concurrently, that sort of thing. And then to come back to your earlier question about people in the same virtual space at the same time, how many can be, because like obviously in a real world site, you can only put so many in. So do you just run multiple instances of that space? And so it's really comes down to the physical space, the technology available, which at the moment, that's not our bottleneck. And then instructor, how much can an instructor handle? Then, of course, how many will sign up? We had to reject people at 24. And I think they said that they thought 48 would have made. So
when you ran the experiment, those were just students who were on campus.
Yeah.
Right? And that was last semester?
That was, yeah, in the fall, yeah. Oh, the question that Bill just asked.
I told you we need
or just an ambient room mic. The question that Bill asked was, I don't remember what the question Bill asked was.
Who were the subjects and when did you run the experiment?
Who were the subjects in the pre-test, in the beta test? They were largely anyone that wanted to sign up for it, undergrads. And I know Laura had announced it in her courses, so there were people that are taking her courses, but like I sent out to students that I knew and told them to tell their friends, and basically we had a, what do you call it, a survey, not Survey Monkey, what's the Doodle, a Doodle sign-up thing where, you know, just on the little announcement we sent out, it said, go to this URL and sign up for a slot, and people could sign up then. And oh, we had 150 through that. And we did give out, I think it was Amazon gift cards to people that completed it. So there was multiple incentive there. That it? Are we good? Oh, Jeff.
Okay, so there's 4 users. Is there 4 PCs?
Yeah, there's, correct. The question was, the question was, if there's 4 users, were there 4 PCs? And the answer is yes, there were 4. And each PC was supporting a user and an assistant. And I think they've gone back and forth between whether it's I'm in the VR the whole week and I'm an assistant the whole week, and I'm in VR half the week and then we swap, you know, but we're making sure they swap. And I don't know if we're keeping partners all the way through or if we're swapping partners.
Do you think there's a possibility for a dedicated reality lab? Come in and do the lab on their own time, or where you're
The question is if we have a space where students can come in on their own time in a dedicated VR space where this is already set up and going and they can just do this. The answer is we don't have that. Another answer is students have requested that, and I think that's something we're looking around. The whole physical space issue is an issue to us. I keep saying that we need to get them to designate the whole armory space to us, right? And, on the exactly the field house, yeah, just all over the place.
I told you, but it's like what?
And we've talked about that, and there is the whole issue of because of going outside and doing this too, both for a number of different reasons, like for generating interest and things like that. And we talked about the tent because we've done some stuff. Not me, I say we. I know that Laura has done some stuff with the Fire Institute there, and they've done that out under tents, but there are lighting issues with the lighthouses if you're outdoors unprotected. But oh, that's something that I didn't mention anywhere through here from day one. So all those subjects that we've had, Tassie said they need a VR backpack to go around with. From the get-go, we've been wireless. The regular Vive wireless was not available when we started, but we had a third-party thing that we retrofit hooked up. So all the subject data has been wireless. So we've never had to worry about wire in the environment. And so that's something interesting about what we're doing. And honestly, I think that's a godsend to us to not have to mess with that, and that's just off the table then. And we, even with the older way we did it, before the new Vives came out, yeah, I'm sleepy, sorry. Before the new Vives, we were wireless and we got good enough performance, and we're getting at least 100 frames a second. We've been careful to do that. I think it's over what we need, but we're getting that. Any other questions? I've gone way past time. Any questions from out there?
I asked if there has been.
And did anyone else add on?
Yeah, there were 5 people on there.
Okay, great. Thanks. Bye-bye, online people. Thank you.